Hey Gators, it's Dr. Jensen, and I just wanted to make a brief video going through more details of the Rupert Murdoch scandal. So I made some notes that I wanted to share with you that you could use to kind of unpack this important film for our class. So in your discussion post, and I'll be looking at the screen above my camera, forgive me, but in our discussion post, you were asked to list two ways in which Murdoch's media empire is alleged to have committed crimes. So these are some potential crimes you could have written about. You could talk about invasion of privacy, illegally obtained voicemails, telecommunications trespassing, or phone hacking. Yes, those are real crimes. Suppressing evidence during investigation, bribing or corruption of police officers, lying under oath, which you know is perjury, intimidating witnesses or threatening attorneys, which is known as obstruction of justice, bribery of public officials or corruption, staying out of certain stories in exchange for the acquisition of companies and avoidance of monopoly laws, surveillance and stalking of members of parliament, and threatening blackmail, which is the crime of extortion. So that was definitely a list of more than two crimes, but those are some of the crimes that you could have talked about in which he is alleged to have committed these crimes. So then the other part of the discussion post talked about two important ways in which other media uncovered and reported the scandal. So let's talk about that. These ways include the fact that they used attorneys to investigate. They did judicial inquiries. They had the use of American press and opposing news organizations, asking sources to come forward on the record, convening committees to question news executives. The Guardian newspaper reported that a News of the World investigator had hacked into the voicemail of Millie Dowler, an abducted teenager who was later found murdered. And the charges could also lead to legal trouble for News Corp's operations in the United States, where authorities could pursue charges based on the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, or the FCPA. And that law prohibits U.S. companies from bribing foreign officials. So there's a lot of different ways that the scandal surfaced. Finally, in your discussion post, I wanted you to provide a response and discussion to the tension between a free press and the abuses that powerful media groups can have on democratic institutions. And this was the really big part of the grade. So a lot of this centered around ethical issues. So some of these challenges had to do with dual roles. So we have informing the public, yet also making money as a legitimate business. And also providing proper investigation and not using illegal means to investigate or report the news. You have compromising influences that kind of push you to those ethical boundaries. You certainly have conflicts of interest. You have the coercion of sources. We have something called stonewalling or evasion, certainly professional misconduct. This also demonstrates the incredible power that Murdoch and his News of the World and Sun newspapers held over British politicians, including prime ministers. It was argued that in exchange for political favors, such as allowing Murdoch to purchase more than the legally allowable number of news outlets, Murdoch's newspapers would actively support a particular candidate. The film also went so far as to allude that politicians and police feared Murdoch to the point that they even refused to enforce violations against him or contradict what his papers said was the actual truth. So really, this is an example of one far side of the spectrum of a free press. So I don't want you to think this is business as usual and you should never trust the press. The freedom of the press and the institution of the press is a very important institution in any democracy. The opposite extreme of that would be government-controlled media and a high degree of censorship. So we're trying to operate somewhere in the middle between a truly free press, which goes rogue and renegade and even creates anarchy, to a completely controlled press that is subject to the oversight of the state. So these are just some things that you could have unpacked when you thought about the tension and the abuses of power. And then, of course, you had to provide responses to your classmates. So I wanted to make sure I left you with some of these ideas, and hopefully this helps you as you further consider these concepts in class. So again, enjoy, and thank you for all of your responses, and we'll see you next time.